All right, back here on HQ, and that big news out of college football today coming out of Gainesville, where Billy Napier will stay as head coach of the Florida Gators. Now, his job, of course, has been a hot topic of conversation in the Ville, elsewhere in the SEC, because the Gators are sitting at 500 this season after a 5-7 campaign last year. And when it feels like a bowl game is a reward as a Gator, that is sad, in my opinion. Anyways, Billy Napier is 15-18 since taking over the UF job in 2022. Here's a partial statement from AD Scott Strickland, and he says in this statement that I'm confident that Billy will meet the challenges and opportunities ahead. We're going to work alongside him to support any changes needed to elevate Gator football. And in there, he does say he will remain as head coach of the Florida Gators. All right, so we have two Gators and a Knoll talking about college football coaching hot seats, and we're starting with Billy Napier. We have Richard Johnson and Danny Kannel alongside me. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino. We were talking about Billy Napier because when this news came down, I feel like there's two camps, right? Some people are okay with it. Others are a little, uneasy. They're expecting a coaching change because the standard at Florida is very high. Richard, I'm going to start with you because I found it odd that it's a little vague, and it says, in the statement, we'll continue as head football coach for the Florida Gators. And that's it. It doesn't say for the rest of the season, for 2025. And I don't know if that's maybe intentional or not. What was your take on just that being the statement in terms of Billy Napier and his time there in Gainesville?
Well, Jacqueline, I think it is intentional, and that comes from a source that I spoke to in Gainesville this morning. Now, we have to understand, Florida's not announcing an extension. So there's not exactly something to announce besides the fact that you want to put to bed what has essentially been a week-to-week thing, which is the will or won't Florida fire Billy Napier after every win or every loss. I think you want to get that out of the way at least until Thanksgiving weekend. It is my expectation, my personal expectation, that Billy Napier will be the head coach of Florida in 2025. But you do leave yourself the option if they were to lose to Danny Kannel's Florida State Seminoles by 35 points and there's something that happens in the program discipline-wise or something like that, that you reserve the right. I think the key part of this open letter from Athletic Director Scott Strickland lies a little bit later, and it reads like, quote, in these times of change across college athletics, we are dedicated to a disciplined, stable approach that is focused on long-term, sustained success. That's the message that Florida is trying to put forth here. If they fired Billy Napier now, Florida would have 4 football head coaches in 10 years. That is not exactly a recipe for stability. I think Scott Strickland and Billy Napier, frankly, are pretty tied at the hip together. So at the end of the day, Florida looks at the changing landscape of college athletics, and what they mean by that is you got an early signing period from December 4th through the 6th. You got a transfer portal window that comes from December 9th through the 28th, and then you've got the college football playoff on December 20th. So if there's a high-level coach that you want to poach, that guy's going to be tied up through at least Christmas, maybe New Year's, maybe deep into January. I think eventually a school of Florida's stature will fire a coach and will step into this uncertain December landscape in college football. But I think Florida looked at the landscape and said, it ain't going to be us.
Yeah, Richard, I actually think this is a pretty wise move for a couple of reasons from Scott Strickland. I think he knows what's about to happen, right? They get through Georgia, and it's close, so you kind of have a fan base that's holding out some hope, but they're about to go to Texas. Then they've got 2 really tough games against LSU and Ole Miss, and then they play Florida State, as you mentioned. So it's about to be a little bit bumpy. In today's landscape, one thing that is happening all over the place is you are seeing programs try to poach players from programs that are struggling, right? Hey, we'll hit you up in your DMs. Hey, you hear about Coach Napier? He might be on the outs. Why don't you come join us? If people see vulnerability, they will try to absolutely undermine that roster. So this shows a united front, yes, to their fan base and to alums and to boosters potentially, but I think most importantly, it's speaking to DJ Lagway, to those younger players on that team saying, hey, I know people are probably hitting you up, but trust us, we're going to bring back Billy Napier, most importantly because you guys like him. That is what I hear from everybody, Richard, is that the players like it, and I think it shows up on the field. This season could have gone south in a hurry after home losses to Miami and Texas A&M. Instead, they've been competitive almost every single game. I see a team that still puts forth great effort for their coach, so I think it's the smart move. The other thing that's smart, and both of you guys talked about this, Jacqueline and Richard, the language in there, there's nothing legally that binds them or any added money. It's a voter note of approval. It's a sign of approval for Billy Napier. That being said, if he did lose in Tallahassee to Florida State, I think this letter means nothing in the end.
And to your point, DK, you said you heard that the players like him, and DJ Lagway, of course, that is the foreseeable future as of right now at Florida. So how much is DJ Lagway's relationship to Billy Napier? What's holding him there as well? Oh,
I think it's huge. I think it means so much in today's world. Again, we're talking about this new era of college football where players are getting paid and so much of the NIL money is tied up in DJ Lagway. It's similar to NFL. When you see quarterbacks can really dictate coaches' futures, whether they like them, they might stay, or they can get them fired, as we've seen. Just ask the New York Jets about Aaron Rodgers. But I do think DJ Lagway is in Gainesville because of Billy Napier. I think you've seen him develop as a young, true freshman player because of Billy Napier, and I think that's a huge reason why Scott Strickland went out there and supported Billy Napier, was to show their prize recruit, who has shown a lot of potential, that, hey, your long-term is secure. If you stay here, we're going to keep your coach here as well.
Danny, I agree. I mean, everybody that I talk to in Gainesville, I should say, tell me that DJ is a little bit of a different cat. He likes the challenge. Remember, he signed on with this team last year when, you know, if you were a recruit like him, maybe you were looking a little sideways because maybe you didn't think Billy Napier would even last this year. He's got a hamstring injury right now. He is fighting through that injury to try to play against Texas. If he was a guy who was really thinking about his long-term future elsewhere, he'd probably shut it down. I mean, we see that across college football right now. These players say, I'll shut it down, I'll preserve my long-term future and my portal future for sure.
I can't help but wonder, where was this loyalty and this mindset back for Dan Mullen? I think a lot of Gator Nation has that same mindset. Let's move on. Talk about Brent Venables.
Wait. That same Gator mindset were the ones running him out of town. It wasn't that. No, of course you backed him. Of course.
That was not me. I just got to say that. Don't group me in.
You live and you learn. I think this is. Okay. I think it is. I think they learned from that mistake.
Okay. Clearly, you know, I'm a little salty about it right now, but we're going to move on to OU, talking about Brent Venables struggling, if you will, in his first year. But Richard, I'll start with you. How much is, you know, being a first-year head coach kind of give him that leniency despite what we've seen on the field?
Well, it's Brent Venables' first year in the SEC, and it is a rocky one, Jacqueline. I mean, they measure themselves against those Texas Longhorns, and Texas running laps around them. Texas was ready for the SEC. They were not. And yes, I understand. They have deep issues on offense with injuries. You know, I don't cast that aside. I understand that is a significant thing. But they went portal shopping to rejigger that offensive line, and it has not worked. So Brent Venables this offseason, the most important decision he will make is who is going to be the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. They made a change from Seth Littrell, who was a native son team captain of the Oklahoma Sooners when they won a national championship under Bob Stoops. And they went away from him. They went a different direction. So what happens with the fate of who's running the offense for a defensive head coach, which is what Brent Venables is, that is just I think the biggest storyline around OU going into this offseason.
Yeah, Richard, I totally agree. I think the other thing, too, when you talk about Brent Venables, the question mark I would have for Joe Castiglione is, why did you extend him before this season when really there wasn't a long track record of success? Because even if they wanted to make a move away from him, they owe him over $40 million as a buyout because of that deal. So they're kind of stuck with him. And I think Richard's 100% right. That offensive coordinator hire will be.
All right, let's talk about USC and Lincoln Riley recently making a quarterback change. I mean, Danny, I feel like whenever that starts to happen and we start to kind of see, it's like a red flag alert, but how much is that really going to save his situation in your opinion?
Oh, it's not. And trust me, as somebody who has been on that end of the scapegoat where somebody has to take the fall, and a lot of times it's an offensive coordinator who gets fired, it's somebody on the staff gets fired, or it's a quarterback that gets benched. And don't get me wrong, Miller Moss has not been incredible. And he's coming off a game with 3 interceptions that they lost on the road to Washington. So you're trying to shake things up and get the proverbial spark from Jaden Maeva, who I do think will help an offensive line that has been struggling to protect Miller Moss. Maeva's more mobile in that situation, but this is a fan base. You talk about disgruntled, and man, are they upset. Not only did you have a generational quarterback in Caleb Williams who won the Heisman Trophy and don't even have a Pac-12 championship to show for it, but now all of a sudden you're looking looking at the season well below expectations. There are some very frustrated USC fans. But again, like some of these contracts that are given out, I don't think they can part ways with him this soon. I think they're stuck with him for the next couple years.
Yeah, Danny, you know, for me with Lincoln Riley, the days of the Oklahoma automatic playoff team coached by Lincoln Riley, those get further and further in the rearview mirror. It is diminishing returns for this USC program under Lincoln Riley. You wonder what's going on. Potential friction with the athletic department and Lincoln Riley, the GM search that they tried to do in the offseason, that didn't really end up getting the guy that they wanted. They shot for Courtney Morgan, who remained at Alabama. And, you know, you wonder, a lot of these guys who seem fed up with the college football atmosphere seem to be going to the NFL. And Lincoln Riley has a guy with Cliff Kingsbury who he has a relationship with. And you wonder, like, at the end of the day, like, is Lincoln Riley just going to do that? Is Lincoln Riley just going to go to the NFL and say, hey, this isn't the college football I signed off for or signed on with all the portal and all that kind of stuff? It doesn't seem like USC is handling the portal era very well, and it doesn't seem that Lincoln is handling the adversity very well. Lincoln Riley's never lost like this in his career. He is right now, and it's been rocky at Heritage Hall.
I don't know if he has an opportunity in the NFL too, Richard. Like, that star has kind of been, fading in recent years because of the lack of success. So that's a question mark too. If he wanted to go to the NFL, I don't think there's an opportunity for Lincoln Riley.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if there's not an opportunity for Bill Belichick right now, right, it's a little competitive out there. Let's button this up with your alma mater. Of course, we got to talk about Florida State, because they're off to their, worst start to the season in 40 years. I could go on and on as much as I would love to.
I'm sure you would love to give all those numbers.
I would. We're looking at the schedule, though. In all seriousness, though, Danny, if a team is sitting at 1-8 with a program like FSU, typically we would be talking about the roof's on fire, call for Mike Norvell to be gone. But that's really not the conversation here. And why is that? It's warming up. That's more the verbiage that I feel like I'm hearing.
Yes, and it's all about the same issue we were talking about with Brent Venables at Oklahoma, except the buyout is $20 million more. Even if Florida State was like, yes, we want to move on, we think we made a mistake, they can't afford it. It's over $65 million they would have to cut a check. And I don't think they should. I think this has been a season that's been completely derailed because of mistakes they made in the transfer portal with DJ Uiagalelei. Some players, an offensive line they thought was veteran experienced, all of a sudden has injuries and they're shuffling guys up front. It has been a disastrous season. There is no sugarcoating it. But I think we have to remember this is the same coach that did go undefeated in the regular season last year with an ACC championship game, and you try to say, all right, we're going to give you a pass for this season, but next year we have to make improvements and significant improvements. And the good news, and what I'm trying to tell Florida State fans is, look at what Indiana did. And I know that was a new coach, but they brought in the right players, and that was what Mike Norvell had success with 2 years ago and 3 years ago. There's going to be a lot of roster turnover. There'll probably be some coaching staff turnover as well. The reality, though, is Florida State is stuck with Mike Norvell, which I am okay with and support him. I think he's a great coach, but they're stuck with him for next year at the very least.
I mean, and to your point, this is essentially an entirely different team than the undefeated team we saw a season ago. Richard, DK, we certainly appreciate it. See, look, Gators and Seminoles, we can all get along. We're talking about college football. And our friends over at 24/7 Sports, they've got you covered all season long. Team coverage, recruiting rankings, transfer portal updates. Make sure you check them out at 247sports.com.